So, we finally made it. Yeah. It took almost as long as some of your flights. Sorry about that, but yeah, thought it would be interesting. Well, good morning. Welcome to Abla 2016. It's finally arrived, and we're quite pleased and enthusiastic about all of the wonderful attendance. By the way, I'm Susan Bryan, the one who sent out frantic emails encouraging you to register, to reserve your hotels, to send in your photographs, to check Facebook, etc. For me, this experience has been really great. It's been wonderful having such close communication with all of you, and it's been a very rewarding one at the same time. I would like to thank all of you for your kindness, patience, and cooperation, sincerely. We hope you're ready to begin 4 days of intensive activity, all focused on sharing best practices, learning from each other, learning new ways of doing things, and taking advantage of this event to do networking with the common goal of improving our binational centers and the services we offer. Although we are all different and operate in many different environments, we share common goals and objectives. It is now my privilege to present our distinguished guests for today. We have Gonzalo Gallegos, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Western Hemisphere Affairs, U.S. Department of State. Mara Takech, Senior Public Diplomacy Advisor, U.S. Department of State. Jonathan Hinnick, Principal Deputy Coordinator, Bureau of International Information Programs, U.S. Department of State. Yeah. And David Hodge, Director, Office of Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Western Hemisphere, U.S. Department of State. And Thomas Scarnati, President of the Board of Directors of the Instituto Mexicano Norteamericano de Relaciones Culturales de Nuevo León in Monterrey. We can't answer our phone that way, they would hang up, so we're just Relaciones Culturales. And I would like to invite Thomas Scarnati to formally welcome you on behalf of my Board of Directors.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to Monterrey, Mexico. Wait. Welcome to Houston, the fourth largest city in the U.S. I think probably some of you might have arrived a few days early to take advantage of all there is to see and do in Houston. Some of you may be staying on a few extra days. You should be aware that you can run into some very extreme weather here. Temperatures are usually quite warm. You'll get some tremendous rainfall. And you'll also find out that here in the US, and especially in Texas, there's never enough ice, and the temperature in the room is never cold enough. So you can walk into a shopping mall, a museum, a hotel, or any place and get flash frozen. So, shorts and a sweater are not uncommon. Don't feel awkward if you end up looking like that. Susan Bryan, our executive director, asked me to say a few words to you, and I'll try to keep them to just a few words. I'm actually going to stick to a script so I don't get too far off. But since we're theoretically the host center for this year's event, and although we're a bit of a distance from Monterey, it falls on me to be the least interesting part of the program. As I looked at the program the other day, I couldn't help but be impressed with the topics to be presented over the course of the next few days. There is a lot of valuable information that BNCs can use to help maintain their vitality and significance in the face of the constantly evolving panorama of education and learning techniques. My vantage point is that of a BNC board member. So I assure you there's much more to be learned from the directors, the librarians, the instructors, people from Education USA. Anybody here can contribute more than I can. But I do think it's important as a board member to recall why I and in general, why we got involved in this effort. I have been on the board of directors of Relaciones Culturales in Monterrey for nearly 26 years in one capacity or another. The idea of teaching English as a foreign language within the overall concept of bringing about a better understanding of the American culture in the respective countries in which we operate is indeed a noble one. In Monterrey, our centers fully support the operation of the Benjamin Franklin Library, as well as our theater for cultural events and our gallery for showcasing up-and-coming artists, as well as so many other activities to benefit people of all ages and backgrounds, all thanks to the English language program we offer in our 5 locations. Without doubt, we would be nowhere without the valuable day-to-day work by our executive director, Susan Bryan, her department directors, and the entire teaching staff. If we had to give some merit to the guidance provided by our board, it is simply this: the understanding of the value we can provide in a social context through the soft power of teaching English, and a determination to ensure that all of our activities are aimed at furthering the growth and success of our BNCs as a complete act of service to our community. We, like all of you, know the importance of keeping up to date, and more so of staying ahead of the competition whenever possible. This type of program is designed to help all of us to do just that. There is enough substance here in the coming 4 days for everyone to benefit from. We're glad you were able to come and accompany us this year. We hope you enjoy and learn from the many presentations the program offers. Thank you, and best wishes to everybody.
Even though it's in like 18 print, I can't see. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask David Hodge, Director of Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, to present our keynote speaker for today, for this Abla, it's number 14 actually, our 14th Abla Convention.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here with all of you. I think I know about half of you in the room. Many good old friends. I think many of you may know that I previously had the pleasure of serving as Cultural Affairs Officer, first in Peru, then in Brazil, and then as Public Affairs Officer in Bolivia. So really, I think I do know half of you. And I look forward to meeting the other half of you. I'll be here all week. The network that you all represent is an incredibly important one for helping us achieve our goals in the United States with our relations with Latin America. I think about all the speakers we took all over Peru, ranging from cultural preservation issues to free trade, all the huge network of outstanding English offered in Brazil, where we chose Abla and Recife to implement our first access program. And then all the work, Bolivia is a tough place to operate these days, but I think about all of the amazing programs we were able to take advantage of, and the visionary leadership of many of the other centers in Bolivia, including, I was there when they were building the Big Apple in Santa Cruz. But no one understands that importance of the binational center better than Gonzo Gallegos. You have his whole bio in the program, but I'll just recap a little bit where he's been and why he knows the region so well. He went to high school in Venezuela and in Panama. He joined the Foreign Service in 1989, 27 years ago, and since then, except for an excursion tour to Islamabad, has spent his entire career working with Latin American issues. He was director in Washington, both the offices of Caribbean Affairs and Central American Affairs, served in Havana, Trinidad and Tobago, Bogota, Nicaragua. But I think that his service in Costa Rica is kind of the capstone of why he's here and why he was selected to be the keynote speaker today. He began his career as the Binational Center Director in Costa Rica in 1989. I met him in 1990 when I was an intern at the embassy in San Jose in the economic section. And I have a very embarrassing picture of the two of us, but I'm saving it for a future event. And then his last overseas tour was as chargé d'affaires at the U.S. Embassy in Costa Rica, where he continued to work closely with the Binational Center. So I think there's really no one who can better express our appreciation for the network and all the values and cooperation that you all represent than Gonzo. So please, Gonzo Gallegos.
Thank you, Dave. David is actually one of my oldest friends in the Foreign Service, having met him in his extreme youth, if I remember the picture that he speaks about correctly. And we were both very, very young back then. And it was a different time. But times have changed. Thanks, David, for the kind introduction. I want to recognize my State Department colleagues, Jonathan Hennick, Principal Deputy Coordinator, Mara Tekic, the Senior Public Diplomacy Advisor, for joining me this morning. Really, between the three of them, David, Jonathan, and Mara, you really have the resource base and the program base that you all should be looking at when you're working and want to work with the embassies. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today is the dynamic of change that has gone on between the interrelationship of the binational centers with the embassies, from the days when many of the binational centers were led by Foreign Service officers to the low years pre-integration of U.S. Information Agency with the State Department, where we lost half of our Foreign Service officers, our public information officers, and half of the budget for USIA before integration. And now post-integration, 16 years now, and I think it's come full circle. And through the hard work of officers like David and Mara and Jonathan, public diplomacy has a much firmer footing within the department. We have substantial resources that a region like the Western Hemisphere has to really fight for. And Jonathan represents, the entire, office of IIP, which doesn't just deal with the Western Hemisphere. How you doing, Carl? It's good to see you. Thanks for coming. It doesn't just deal with the Western Hemisphere, but with, the areas of the world that are not working. And, this is a cold, hard truth that I like to put onto the table, up front. We compete for resources for a very good reason. There's a lot of really screwed up places in the world, and we're trying to help there. But I like to talk about the Western Hemisphere as a place that works. Where an American dollar put into a problem results in more than $1's worth of results at the back end of it. And that's the way that we're able to maintain the resources that we have and really show good value for the money, the American tax dollar that we spend in the region. And you all are really a key part of how we do that. And the conversations that I have with Jonathan and with David and with Mara and with Silvio, who's here, Silvio, really revolve around this idea of how do we draw you all, the binational centers, closer, and how do we integrate you into this broader programmatic scheme based on, U.S. goals and objectives. And I think one of the ways that we do that is that you all have to have a clear understanding of what we're looking to do, why we're doing it, and how we want to do it. And then we need to draw closer to you all and see, what the potential you all have to assist us in doing that. The bottom line is I know and understand. I was a binational center director. I know you're a business, You're a nonprofit business, but you're a business. You got to make a payroll every 2 weeks. That's the best line I ever get to say to my private sector friends is I've made a payroll for 2 years. I know, what it's like every 2 weeks to have to put money in people's pockets. I know how important it is to hire, train, and maintain a staff. And so, these are areas that we want to be able to help you with to move forward on. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit. We all know that a conference this size could not happen without the commitment and due diligence of Abla's steering committee and through the incredible work of our host, BNC's Susan Bryan. Thank you, Susan. Director of the Instituto Mexicano Norteamericano de Relaciones Culturales de Nuevo León in Monterrey, one of my favorite places. And why is that, Susan? Because in Monterrey, those of you who don't know, they have a chain of restaurants called El Rey de Cabrito. And I love that place. So if for no other reason, I'm going to get back to Monterrey to eat at El Rey. Also want to recognize Tom Scardati, President of the Board of Monterrey, for his commitment, support, and vision. 26 years of working with BNCs. And having been an executive director, like many of you all, I know what it's like to have that monthly meeting with the board. And boards come in all shapes and all sizes. But the one thing you can say about them is that they're extremely dedicated and they work hard. And so you can never take anything away from them. So thank you, Tom, for all of that work that you've done. It's an honor to be discussing the strong partnership that exists between the Binational Center Network and the government of the U.S. I'm delighted to see friends, some of whom I've already called out, whom I've worked with in the past, and to see new faces showing determination and a commitment to improve the mutual understanding and common welfare of the region. And that's really the coin of the realm for you all. So, our ties across the hemisphere are strong. Our geographic proximity and engagement opens doors to the links created by people-to-people exchanges, and public diplomacy programs are at the core of our expanding and rapidly evolving relationships in this region. And to be frank, in my 27 years with the Department of State, I have not seen a moment as ripe as this one. I have never seen a moment like we have today to work together, to affect change, and to benefit our people. With the opening in Cuba, thank you, President Obama, sensible foreign policy, change of government in Argentina, and the chorus of negative voices we heard in the past, but that have been reduced as the influence of the Chavez and Maduro government wane. I have never seen an opportunity that we have to make a difference. And so I'm looking forward to working with you all to make that difference. So you all know I started as a center director, and I'm pretty much going to end my career. One of my last major official duties is this speech right now. And over the next 4 to 6 weeks, I will ultimately retire and walk out the door, after almost 3 decades of serving my country. I couldn't think of a better way to go out than having this chat with you, helping to make clear to you all and understand what we're looking to do and why it's so important that we work together to do it. So the U.S. program to support binational cultural institutes in the region were spurred by the wartime effort to counteract the well-organized, officially supported institutes of the Axis countries, as well as institutes similarly cultivated by the British and French governments. From the time many of the centers were directed by U.S. Information Agency officers, our partnership has evolved to reflect the needs and wants of our people across the hemisphere. And so I want to share President Obama's policy priorities in the region to reflect and identify with you the ways we can continue to enhance our partnership while working towards these mutual goals. And as I said at the top of the speech, this is important because ultimately what we see and want to have in the region is a region that's democratic, middle class, and secure. And I think those 3 elements are really the most important things for you all to consider as you're designing program and work. Does it fit into those 3 areas? And I'm going to talk about 4 separate priorities that fall underneath these 3 issues. But is the programming we're doing going to improve democracy? Will it help grow the middle class? And when I was charge d'affaires in Costa Rica, honestly, the previous ambassadors had neglected the business community. In Costa Rica, we put a bunch of environmental lawyers as ambassador, which is, they're fine. But ultimately, business makes things happen. And one of the businessmen asked me, well, Gonzo, what can we do? What can we do to help make this happen? And I said, it's really simple. If you are not doing everything you can to raise the lower middle class and strengthen the middle class, then you are just shooting yourselves in the foot. You're hurting yourselves if you are not growing the middle class. And so you all play a key role in this, and I think that you will have advantages in terms of your businesses if you focus on that measure. So, So the president's policies really fall squarely into the framework of partnership and shared responsibilities. And the issues are really this: a secure and democratic future for all citizens, social inclusion and the provision of essential social services, for all, expanded economic opportunity and prosperity, and clean and secure energy. Ultimately, we want to support the development of democracies that are accountable, inclusive, just, and strong, and deepen U.S. partnerships and exchange in support of these policy goals. Throughout the hemisphere, people are demanding economic opportunity, greater government accountability, and increased transparency. And we see a key role for binational centers in working towards these goals. And all of this means opportunity for you and your centers as you hold an invaluable key to obtaining these goals: English language instruction. Freedom of expression is an essential component of the exercise of democracy. Along with the regional partners, we promote free and open, inclusive societies, speaking out when freedoms are curtailed, media and civil society are restricted. We've reached a tipping point on corruption in the hemisphere. Governments must demonstrate that democratic institutions can deliver and are accountable. Ongoing corruption scandals reflect both the shortcomings of weak and non-transparent institutions not delivering to their citizens, and the maturation of civil society exercising their rights. With our partners, we will continue to confront this challenging work together from every direction through the rule of law and institution building activities that are the foundation of our programs and investments in the hemisphere. Without citizen security, democracies and economies cannot prosper. Education will lag, people stop investing, and seek safer surroundings. We expanded our citizen security initiatives from the U.S.-Mexico border to the Andes and strengthened sub-regional security initiatives, such as the Central American Regional Security Initiative and the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, as well as bilateral agreements with Mexico and Colombia. Comprehensive and integrated programs deter criminal activity, strengthen law enforcement and rule of law, address root causes of crime in young people, and provide alternatives to delinquency and gang involvement. In Central America, conditions in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador are driving unaccompanied minors and families to our border. Our strategy for engagement in Central America focuses on addressing underlying conditions driving migration from the region, such as crime, poverty, and weak governance. Speaking of greater opportunities and prosperity, we're working towards deeper hemispheric integration, focusing on women entrepreneurs and small business leaders through programs stimulating prosperity and supporting young entrepreneurs. The Young Leaders of the Americas Initiative, YLI, announced by President Obama in 2015, will leverage best practices from entrepreneurs across the hemisphere to drive greater economic opportunities. I hope you have the chance to meet these amazing young people in your home countries and work with the public affairs sections to do so. Economic opportunity must be inclusive, enhancing opportunities for African descendants, indigenous, persons with disabilities, and LGBTI persons. There are over 150 million African descendants in Latin America and 30 to 45 million indigenous who disproportionately face discrimination in all sectors of society. A rising boat should lift all citizens, and the Obama administration has worked throughout its tenure under the idea that for our societies to prosper, all members must have a chance to have their input counted. Bilateral action plans with Brazil and Colombia serve as models to promote racial and ethnic equality through access to quality education, economic opportunities, the justice system, health and environmental justice, engaging African descendants and indigenous communities in these countries. The U.S., Uruguay, and the U.S. and Uruguay also collaborate through an MOU on social inclusion. The Americas have become the new center of our global energy map. The hemisphere supplies over 1/4 of the world's crude oil and 1/4 of its gas. However, electricity prices in the region are some of the highest in the world, holding back new business development and the expansion of current businesses. Connecting the Americas 2022 promotes the interconnection of energy markets and universal access to affordable electricity within the next decade. Governments need to act to create environments that attract necessary private investment in their energy sectors, and they can only do that if they can lower the cost of electricity throughout the region. So our policy when it comes to energy in the region is simple. We need to have more of it. It needs to be cheaper, and it needs to be produced in a cleaner way. And if you all can figure out a way To develop a program based on any three of those, I can tell you right now, there's resources, not just from the U.S. government, but from the private sector that can be spent on that type of program. Education. Improving education and promoting regional cooperation in education underpins all our other regional policy goals, and it is where our work coincides. Education is central to the development of economies and the health of democracies, and the driving force behind Secretary Kerry raising the policy profile of education diplomacy globally in 2014. Many foreign governments, even those with which we have challenged bilateral relationships, want to educate their young in the United States, work with us to improve their education systems, to better align their degree offerings with their own economies, or to engage U.S. practitioners and policymakers on regional best practices. And that means, in many cases, the capacity to speak English. Innovative partnerships driven by foreign government financial contributions and national scholarship efforts are particularly notable in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Panama, Peru, and Uruguay. Key bilateral education initiatives across the region also support President Obama's signature 100,000 Strong in the Americas initiative. According to the November 2015 release of Open Doors International Educational Trends, Latin America and the Caribbean region are the fastest growing regions for U.S. study abroad, with an 8% increase in 2014. 100,000 Strong in the Americas Innovation Fund continues to stimulate new partnerships between higher education institutions throughout the region that will facilitate short-term exchange opportunities for students to gain technical and linguistic skills, increase teamwork, and enhance cross-cultural competency for the 21st global workforce. To date, the Innovation Fund has secured $10 million in public and private sector funds as a result of coordinated efforts between the Department of State, Partners of the Americas, NAFSA, corporations, and foundations. The Innovation Fund has secured enough funds to date to provide competitive grant opportunities to higher education institutions throughout the region through at least 2018. Since the inception of the Innovation Fund in 2014, 70 Innovation Fund grants have been awarded to teams of 155 higher education institutions from 19 countries. The Innovation Fund network has grown to more than 1,600 higher education institutions in the WHA region. Working closely with the White House, Partners of the Americas, and the private sector, we anticipate more contributions to the dynamic public-private partnerships model of the Innovation Fund, including additional commitments from governments such as Colombia, Argentina, and others. As you see, there is a constant demand for opportunities to create strategic partnerships between institutions that leverage institutional resources, build capacity, and promote regional educational cooperation. These are trends we want you all to know about, understand, and ultimately take advantage of. As you can see, we have a robust and vibrant relationship with the entire region, building a firm foundation of cooperation across the hemisphere to tackle a broad array of new challenges and advance shared security, economic, and social goals. You should be proud of the role you play in helping our hemisphere to be a more integrated, inclusive community. Through English language, educational counseling, alumni involvement, networking, business labs, cultural programs, and technical capacity, you are drawing our hemisphere closer and closer together every single day. We value your support and contribution as we seek to develop strong communities across the Americas, and so our contributions to BNCs reflect this commitment. We have invested nearly $9 million over the last couple of years in the enhancement of facilities, technology, and programming through American Space's partnerships. And we do this because you are partners in developing and strengthening that robust middle class that is inclusive, enterprising, and stable. As I said, education is the linchpin of our policy in the region. Education is stability, education is opportunity, education is freedom, education is justice, and education ultimately is peace. We recognize that our relationship is not perfect. We've had growing pains as any mature partnership. We know that you are not just a physical platform to conduct programs, but you're a valued partner with whom we share many goals. And so I would ask that you work with our embassies and consulates across the region to identify commonalities, to develop an integrated vision of what public engagement via the BNCs can do to support the 4 pillars I described. You've been pioneers in the English education field, supporting access programs and social inclusion and educational initiatives such as College Horizons, encourage young people's curiosity and innovative spirit through labs and educational exchanges. You continue to play a role building technical capacity for higher education administrators, encouraging curricular reform and integrating best educational practices. As you gather this week, I urge you to look at new and creative ways to reach out to your audiences and what your role can be in the future we are all working towards. How do you remain relevant in communities where the only constant is change? How do you plan strategically to measure your programmatic impact and develop a deep understanding of what your audiences are seeking from you? We want to help you in these efforts, and the way forward needs to go through our embassy and consulate partners. Together, you can work to identify creative new ways to reach and engage your audiences. This week, you'll hear about strategic planning, monitoring, evaluation, using tools to reach your audiences, but more importantly, identifying ways to establish relationships. And you will hear about exchanges and opportunities. Each time you attend a session, think to yourself, how do we do this in our center now? Seek out your country partners, share ideas, learn from the network, and look for innovative ways to reach your audiences. I'd love to see BNCs compete for 100,000 strong Innovation Fund grants, to host entrepreneurship workshops featuring Wildlife Fellows, to see students applying to study in the U.S., encourage young people to address community issues together in open and honest forums, or even host sports events that show the importance of fair play and inclusiveness. In closing, let me thank you for your commitment and partnership. You play a vital role in helping prepare our young people to engage more effectively in this globalized world. So thanks for 27 great years. I attended my first Abla conference in Santo Domingo in, I think it was 1991, or was that 92? In 92. It's been a great run. You all have a bright, bright future ahead of you all and tremendous opportunities at your feet. And so with that, I wish you the best of luck. Have a great week, and most of all, enjoy yourselves. Take care.
On behalf of Abla, we would like to present Gonzalo Gallegos with a diploma a certificate, and a plate that's handmade in Mexico in Tlaquepaque, so it can decorate his office or home. Well, moving on. Unfortunately, now I have to make some announcements before, because this is like the only time we're going to be all together with a microphone. And I'm a teacher, so I have to take care of this microphone. So I have just these announcements. First of all, I'd like to recognize our sponsors. Number one sponsor, Department of State. Thanks so much for all of your support. Without you, this would not have been possible. Our gold sponsor, Cengage. Our silver sponsors, Kamla and Pearson. And we have our other sponsors, which College Board, DirecTV Escuela Plus, EduSoft Limited, Synergyscape, and SIT World Learning. And I would also like to thank all of the support that was given by the Abla Steering Committee. And since a lot of you don't know who they are, I will read off their names if they could just stand up and take a bow. Okay, so we have, it's not in any order, it's just kind of how it popped into my head. So Johnny Gonzalez from Ecuador. Mario Blanco Pate from Uruguay. Vivian Morgan from Argentina. Eli Torresin from Brazil. Luis Alberto Gamarra from Bolivia. Ilse Chemali from Venezuela. Telma Camarena from the Dominican Republic. Ana Maria de la Torre from Peru. Ruth McBride from Chile. Where's Ruth? Okay. And Joellen Simpson from Colombia, who took on the responsibility of connecting Abla with all of the sponsors. And last but not least, a person who's formed a great part of our steering committee and kept us together on phone calls, Silvia Gonzalez, Policy and Coordination Officer at WHA. Now, just a few explanations because there have been some questions. On your programs, we know that there was a place for you to register for the different sessions. That was just to give us an idea of the interest. You can go to any session you'd like. Okay, there are colored dots. That does not mean they're exclusively for those groups. It's just a suggestion. Okay. There's also on the program, there's a cultural capsule and raffles. That's to keep you here. So we're going to teach you a little bit about Mexico, just a few things, and we're going to raffle off some products. So you got a number, and that'll be used. Maybe someone will win every single prize. That would be very unusual, but yes, that could happen. And those raffles will be after lunch and after the afternoon coffee break. Gee, I wonder why. So, yeah. And we also, I need to explain something about the barbecue on Thursday. The barbecue on Thursday, we will be leaving the first bus, I think, leaves at 8 o'clock from the hotel lobby. And I just have to explain one thing there. Yes, there will be some drinks. This was not paid for by the State Department, okay? So there will be some drinks. You will have tickets. But when those tickets run out, there's a thing here in the States called a cash bar. And I know that Latin America is not, well, Mexico at least, we're not used to that. But if you want any more, you have to pay for it, okay? Unfortunately, we couldn't pay for all that. As you know, breakfasts are included. If for some reason you arrived early and had to sign your breakfast, it'll be taken off at the end. If there's a problem with that, let me know. It is included, so don't worry about that. There is Wi-Fi in your rooms, and there's Wi-Fi here. When we might have to ask you now and then because there are a lot of people, and I don't know if we're going to be able to supply the Wi-Fi for everyone and still show videos. So we may have to ask some of you to disconnect at some time, which is a good thing. Yeah. Lunch will be served at the Liberty Hall. It's out the door to the left. It's a low building. It's part of the Marriott. And last but not least, certainly not least, I'd like to thank my wonderful staff who've had to deal with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the past few weeks. So if you need anything or have any questions, they're here to help you out. So this also is not in any order. It's just as it popped into my head. So we have Lenin Salazar. He's over here. Sandra Domingo. Lucila Gutierrez. Felipe Sariñana. Rolando González. Tanya Olvera. David Martínez. Juan Reyes. Corina Pintor. This is a never-ending list, you know. Raúl Pérez. Alexandra Gaxiola. And last but not least, Felipe Martinez. Okay. So thanks to everyone. It's really been fun. Bye. No, we're just getting started. We're going to begin our first session in Ballroom B and Ballroom C. So we're going to give you a few minutes to move around. And just a note, we do need anyone who has a presentation, if you could take your flash drive to the office, which is in Nueces. And I have another note here. Oh, if you haven't registered, also try to find time between the talks and get yourself registered in the office, right next door to the right. So let's get on with it. Thank you.